Greetings. This is the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer platform. The acronym for the program is CREE, C-R-E-E, and that is my handle. The date is May 21st, 2020. The time is approximately 5 p.m. here on the West Coast, 8 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, and whatever time it is that you listen to this as a playback. So thanks for being here. This is supposed to be a discussion, so I'm looking at the chat because I want to interact with folks to the degree that people are here and want to interact, to talk about what Black American political leaders are saying and or doing in regard to helping Black people in America and worldwide during this COVID crisis. And I think it's a pretty good illustration generally of the same question that you can ask about the former president of the United States or a mayor right now or governor. I mean, they can only do what they can do, depending upon what they're, what they're willing to sacrifice. But certain things, if you can't do anything, now I realize that it's possible that the racists can make you say things when all you want to do is be quiet, because there are certain times when you can't say certain things if you want to keep breathing or you want your children to keep breathing. And I just recently got some pretty old information about that happening to the fellows at the bottom of gathering of Christ Church, and I believe it. But yeah, you may not be able to say forthrightly what is the case, but you ought to at least be able to be quiet. Usually, now sometimes they'll make you say stuff too. They'll put a gun to your head, figuratively speaking, almost literally, because they're not like the when it comes to us, it's not like the Italian mafia. It's not like the Italian mafia used to do and say, well, we don't hurt each other's families. No, they're willing to kill your children. So there's only so much they can say, but I did want to highlight it. Now there are problematic features to each of these three branches. Now notice that I'm not talking about the religions themselves. This is not going to be a discussion about the merits or demerits of Islam, or the merits or demerits of Christianity, or the merits or demerits of the Hebrew Israelite faith. So, but these are three, actually there are 5 men up there, but the three main principles, Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam, T.D. Jakes of the Potter's House and many Disney flicks. And then on the bottom are a couple of guys that are probably a lot less well known. They're with the Gathering of Christ Church. And as I can understand it, they're the most popular right now of the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, so I just wanted to go through what they're saying and not saying, and whether or not I think that's helping or hurting. So what I did was I just pulled up a bunch of tabs for talking points, so I can just go through them. So let me pull that up. Give me a second. And we'll take off these pictures of these guys. Okay, so you're looking at my screen, so this is just like if you just didn't have anything else to do and you're, because you're sequestering in place and you're at home, or you're in my house actually, let's say, and you're just watching what I'm doing. Maybe you got a book and here I am on my big screen TV that I use as a monitor, and this is what I'm looking at. Right, so I saw this in my news feed. Racism declared a public health crisis in Ohio's most populated county. Oh, now they want to declare that racism is a public health crisis, And I've been through this before, so let me just give a quick and dirty Cliff Notes. This idea that a lot of people are taking a hold of, that because of our long-standing maltreatment on the basis of racism, which is anti-blackness, because of that, because of all the horrible plights that has caused, that black people are getting sicker and dying at a higher rate of this thing called COVID. And that sounds very, very warm and very empathetic, but it's actually not being used to help us. Um, First of all, it's not true. Yeah, it is true that we've been victimized by racism, but it isn't. I find it illogical to conclude that what is happening to us is that because of racism we're getting sicker and dying of COVID. People who've been listening to this know this. But yeah, but it sounds like you're not being a racist. It sounds like you really care. Suddenly they care about what their racism is doing to us. So here's a whole article on it, and they're talking about, racism has been a pandemic long before the current coronavirus pandemic. And this is a commissioner of some county, Kevin L. Boyce. Blah, blah, blah. And then here comes the standard statement. The declaration by I guess it was local government, describes race as a social construct with no biological basis. It also identifies two types of racism: individualized racism and systemic racism. Racism is racism. It's something that people do. It's something that people understand the consequences of when they perpetrate it. They automate it so that it's easier for them to do it, but it's still people doing it. And so if individualized means a person doing it, yeah, that's all racism is. You don't need to separate it into individualized and systemic anyway. And it does have they say it has no biological basis when it suits them. They'll publish that, whether a black person says it or a non-black person. But we know that that's not the case. We know that, there are a whole bunch of things that are different in the black human body, right? From vitamin D to body mass index to glomerular filtration rate for your kidneys, for your also our immune systems. Black people's immune systems respond stronger to pathogens. A lot of things like that. Peak airflow varies because of race. So many medicines are not good for black people. ACE inhibitors are not good for black people. I mean, race is a real thing. And there's all kinds of medical literature that says that it is. But here they're going to say, well, because of the persistent discrimination, here we go, persistent discrimination, this is why we're having the disparate outcomes. Of course, see, there's the trick. You latch on to the persistent discrimination, maltreatment, racism. Yeah, true statement. And then they say disparate outcomes. They link them together. See, you'd have to buy that first. And you're more willing to buy it because you know the persistent discrimination is true. But then you say, okay, and the disparate outcomes, meaning different outcomes, black people are getting sicker and dying more. You buy that too. And, that's very hard to believe. Let me go back over again why that's very hard to believe. While this page loads. Number one is we see what's happening in Africa. And we can rule out that it's not that people are not going there. We can rule out that it's not that they're testing, and we can rule out that it's not the temperature. All three of those lies that we'll try to tell you. But they have been debunked. Okay, so there is, though, people who are most genetically like us on the continent of Africa, it's barely touched them. In addition to that, some of this is a repetition, I understand. But in addition to that, lower respiratory disease, which is what is the main thing in COVID, this COVID disease, that's the way people are dying, right? Lung failure. That's lower respiratory disease. But that's just not something that black people generally die from in comparison to white folks. And this data is for white people, but I would say for non-black people. That's the thing. So you're looking at people in Africa, and then let's look at black people here. Well, usually, do we get it more than other people? Now, in 2017, when these statistics were taken, that is the data from which this bar graph was made. In 2016, 2015, 2010, 2000, 1995, all during those times we had the same racism. All during those times we had the same, certainly in 2017, according to them, we had the same comorbidities of metabolic disorder, which is, obesity combined with diabetes and maybe some heart disease. We've always had more of that compared to white people. 2017, certainly. But in 2017, like every other year, we were not dying of chronic lower respiratory diseases to the extent that non-black people were. So let's look at the chart. This is a distribution of the 10 leading causes of death among the white population in 2017. And there, if you go down to the third bar, you will see chronic lower respiratory disease at I think it says 6.4%. Because even though I have a large screen, that's a little tiny number. And that's what I'm looking at. Okay, and then, so their chronic respiratory disease is 6.4%. And then down here, influenza and pneumonia. Well, when people die of the flu and pneumonia, that's also lung disease. So you add another 2%. You're at 8 point, whatever this was I set up here, 8.4%. That's just every year of all the white people who die, 8.4% of them die of lung failure, lower respiratory disease. But when you look at black people, you see that lower respiratory disease, and by the way, I have to make a correction because I said before on a previous video, I don't remember which one, that it was not on the 10 top leading causes of death for black people, but it actually is. Instead of being number 3, it's number 6 for us at 3.3%. And you don't see it as now I can see it bigger. And you don't see flu or pneumonia at all. So you don't have to add anything. So now what you do is you're comparing the 3.3%. I'll just go, this is my Facebook post. You're comparing the 3.3% that it is usually for us to the 8.4% that is usually for white folks. But suddenly this year it flipped. So usually white Americans get lung problems at more than 2.5 times the rate that black people do. That's been every year that racism has ever existed in the United States of America. Right? 2017, 2016, go back however many years you want. That's not us. Usually we die at less than half. Quite a bit less than half the rate of white folks. But this time it's flipped. Why would that be? Coronaviruses, flu, H1N1, MERS, all of that stuff. Those were, coronaviruses. Same racism. Same comorbidities. So what makes this any different? And you combine that with what's going on in Africa. Now, I'm being repetitive. I realize I've said this stuff before and you're looking for me to say something new. And I'm going to talk about what these religious leaders have to say. But it is in the context of, all three of these guys. Let's go back to their pictures. All three of these guys. Louis Farrakhan, T.D. Jakes, and this guy down here to the right, he's the head guy. His name is Elder Rakah. I don't remember his last name. Shiar, I think it's a Hebrew name. And this is his assistant who calls himself Elder Lawyer. Okay. Well, all 5 of these men believe the scriptures that are called the Christian Bible, whatever it is that they call it. Okay, they all believe that, and they're in Proverbs of that book. It says that where there is no vision, the people perish. So what we're looking for them, so we know that their flock's going to perish if there's no vision. In other words, can you see what's going on? Because you have to be able to know when there's a crisis. Like, if you see there's a crisis, you have to know how to respond to that, but you have to know what kind of crisis it is. Can you see clearly? Do you know what's happening? And so for me, I was looking for evidence that any of these 5 gentlemen, or any of these 3 organizations were seeing what was going on. And if they were seeing, were they, in other words, were they seeing, and to what degree were they telling the black people that follow them that if you go into the hospital for something else, if you think you might have COVID symptoms, or even if you went in there for something else and you didn't think you had COVID symptoms, the chances are too great that you will get admitted. I have a Facebook friend who's a a good friend that's a nurse, and she said that in Florida, you can hardly get them to admit a black person. They just send you home constantly. But now they are admitting black people to the hospital like they've won a lottery ticket each time they do it. But the point is, do these men here, are they seeing and are they telling their flock that if you show up to a medical provider, the chances of you getting falsely labeled as having COVID and then mistreated on that basis, which could lead to your death, are too high? So don't go in to get checked just to get checked. Same thing with the tests. Are they telling their flock that the tests could be contaminated with something that could actually make you ill? Do they see that, and are they telling their flock this? Well, we'll go through each one, but as a summary, I didn't see any evidence of the Nation of Islam doing that. I'll show the evidence that Caden gave me that conclusion. I went to T.D. Jake's website, the Potter's House, to see if I could see any evidence that he knew this and was saying this to his flock. I did not see any evidence. I have seen several videos by GOCC in which they do say that. Yeah, it's a plagiarism issue again. It is, but I'm not going to get into that. But they are saying it. At least they are saying that. They are saying it loudly and clearly. The problem with them is you have to weigh the benefit of them saying that in this particular crisis with the other things they say, right? Now, all three of these organizations are highly misogynistic. You know, a black woman better go sit down somewhere. Our job is to be a helpmeet, right? And we don't know enough to say anything that anybody might need to listen to or even follow. So all three of them are that. So they've just knocked out at least 50%, at least, notice how I'm saying at least. They've knocked out at least 50% of their wise counsel. But on the bottom here, the GOCC fellows, now they are in this crisis, this COVID crisis, warning black people to stay away from the medical providers if they can at all help it. Take care of whatever you can at home if you can. If you have to go, make sure that the provisions are made so that people can follow your progress because they can't come in and visit you. Okay, they are saying that. But the problem with that is that they're not, he goes back and forth. Sometimes he'll say with the plagiarism, and I will show you that. He'll talk about this being something that black people need to be wary of. He'll talk about Elder Rakaw here on the right, on the bottom. He'll talk about how this whole COVID thing has been a plot, that it was from the very beginning going to turn on black people who he believes are the Hebrew Israelites. He'll say that. Again, I'm going to say that's plagiarism, but, you know, at least the word's getting out. But the problem is that he goes back and forth. He'll say that's true about black folks, but then he'll add in the word minority, because the problem with them is that they believe that the chosen people, they believe that part of their people are, and I'll show you pictures in a minute, are your mestizo Mexicans. They say that that's the tribe of Issachar. Your mestizo or mulatto Puerto Ricans and Cubans, I believe, that's Ephraim. That's the tribe of Ephraim. I'll show you all this stuff. The problem with that is that lowers the bar of suspicion on non-black people. That could include white people who are pretending to be Native Americans, because that is another group of people that they hold to be our brothers and sisters. So this is the problems that you've raised the alarm. You've given your flock the vision about what COVID is doing to them, but you've confused the whole thing, because now they're apt to listen to the advice of non-black people who practice anti-blackness, and they could be nurses and doctors and health practitioners who might even say that they believe in the same faith as you do, who believe that they're Hebrew Israelite. So then they tell you something to do, whether it's at home or to go see a medical care provider or anything having to do with finances during this whole period, which could be designed to harm you. This is the problem with GOCC. So that's the short and long of it. That's, you know, the short shrift. That's the Cliff Notes. Now, if you want to, you know, go through and see how I came to these conclusions, let me take a look at the studio here and see who's here. 3 people. Okay. We'll see how this goes. People have been getting unsubscribed. So if you have been unsubscribed, you'll need to resubscribe, and you'll need to hit the notification bell. But so there's nobody that said anything that I have to respond to yet. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's see what these guys are saying. And I, it's just how it is. I have to say these guys. Because see, this is where it's going. Let me just talk about this. I put in a search term, or these words in the search field: churches, nonprofit, COVID-19 testing, because I suspected that the usual suspects, those people who practice racism, anti-blackness, were going to try to use black churches to try to get black people to do a lot of COVID testing, which would probably be contaminated. And also it's going to help them track us, right? So I went through all, and I can see, okay, yeah, look, that's local churches, nonprofits provide free COVID-19 testing. And then I went to this one, I clicked this first one here, and it took me right here. So I guess this was in the state of Ohio. So they're talking about local churches, and I'm like, okay, I just need to make sure that they're black churches and black organizations. And they are. Computer's slowing down. Too much stuff up probably. Need to clean it. So yeah, it's making it very difficult for me to scroll up and down and show you what I want to show you. But there were 2 churches that were mentioned, and one organization, and they were, when I Googled that one church, this is the picture I got, so I knew that was a black church. Let's see, then I went to the other church mentioned in the news article. Yep, black church, all the black staff. Okay, so I knew that. Get rid of some of this stuff. And then here's the nonprofit organization, obviously a black organization, and all these places are getting money to do COVID testing. So that means they're buying it, okay? So those are the local ones, but what about the big ones? Pause this because I don't want this to start going. What about the big organizations? What about them? I'm going to take this off so that when I'm ready to play them, we can hear them. So the first thing I started with is, let's make sure I get to the right one. Nope. Okay, so Nation of Islam. So they actually even have like a whole page on their website, NOI.org coronavirus. And so I'm looking to see, okay, are they warning? What is it that, are they warning us about what this is, or are they going to just spew the liberal racist line? Or maybe nothing at all. You can see that none of this is interactive. And then it says providing guidance and information to keep you and your loved ones safe in these times. Okay. And then here, what do I find under the protocols and guidelines? The Black, Brown, and Native American communities are suffering disproportionately. So they bought into it. They bought into it. They're touting that line. So of course, that's going to encourage people to get tested. That's going to encourage people to go see if they have it so they can get treated in a way which might make them not able to come out of the hospital. You might even be encouraging them to say things on a telehealth line that will cause somebody to knock on your door several months from now. So they bought that. And then they are saying, well, as the various states are relaxing stay-at-home restrictions and reopening businesses, we should not violate the guidelines. Say, I'm not for breaking any laws or anything, but it's just how he ends it. And he's, at the end, it says, these protocols and guidelines are for your protection, the protection of your family and loved ones. So can I say that Louis Farrakhan and the head people of the Nation of Islam met that proverb that where the people perish, where there is no vision the people perish? No, I cannot. He does not saying it. He's not, I don't know if he's seeing it, but he's not, certainly not warning. He's doing in the opposite direction. So as far as I can see, the Nation of Islam has failed. I looked for anything else on the page, anything that would make me go in another direction. No, they have a thing on understanding masks and respirators, which has no content on it, really just a picture. And then I went to the videos to see, and it's about food. How do you can food? Okay, because we might, obviously we all know that we need to secure our food supply. Okay, I mean, that's slightly helpful, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't talk about how you should always have been doing this. And if you haven't been doing it now, do it now, because, that we don't know if the food supply and the economic infrastructure is going to survive. They haven't said anything like that, but they've already done their damage by saying that we are suffering disproportionately from it, which is a golden key to them getting paid off of Black Death. So that's the Nation of Islam. As far as I can see, they let us down. And then to back it up, they had a pretty high-ranking official in their organization. This was on the Source, Hip Hop Mag. And his name was Abdul Hafiz, and they said that he passed away from coronavirus at age 56. So Nation of Islam, they failed the vision test for their flock, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I did Google Farrakhan or else, because I remember him saying that, in 2015, the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, justice or else. And I always thought it was funny, because even when I heard that was the name of it, justice or else what? Or else what? So then it was a boycott. That was 5 years ago. Like, yeah, that's really always done a lot of good. And then, justice or else march, just the beginning, but that was 5 years ago. We're full of just empty rhetoric. That's pretty much what our religious leaders are doing, because now Mr. Fuller was right about this. He said, he said that the white supremacists, and I just say the anti-blackists, have said that this is their planet. And in any of the 9 areas of people activity, they have to decide whether or not something can or cannot take place. In economics and education, entertainment, labor and law and politics, religion, sex, and war. So he would say, well, if you got something in your religion, let me take a look at it. I'll tell you what parts you can practice and what parts you can't. I'll tell you what parts you can keep and which parts you have to take out. Right? So if we were ever planning, as a result of religious precepts, as GOCC would call it, or doctrine, to actually do something like Martin Luther King did, Malcolm X did, you get that taken out of your religion, or the way that you practice things, or you suffer the consequences. So this is, really what I said about Barack Obama, because I knew that his children had been threatened. And there is a report that came out. It was a YouTube video about Elder Rakaw with Gathering of Christ Church, GOCC, that his child's health was severely threatened. There's a video out that said his child was snatched up off the streets of Philadelphia and ended up in Egypt, and that it's been compromised ever since. So, I mean, I don't know when, but it seems like this was like maybe 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure that before 5 years, Elder Rakaw was still preaching that the mestizos and the mulatto, they're not even mulattoes, they're quadroonish, they're not even that, they're white. That those were our relatives, because they're one of the 12 tribes. He was still saying that then. Now, I have heard him say since then that originally all the 12 tribes of Israel were black, but then they went in and started marrying the daughters and sons of other nations. But he still accepts them, like no matter how admixed they get, he still accepts them as, our people. Okay, but we were talking about the Nation of Islam, so that takes care of him as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what can he do? Justice or else. I can get rid of this. Prove to you that it's the black churches that they're honing in on. See, now I don't think that TD Jakes is a coon, but just so that there's something else to listen to. I mean, he tries when asked. This is a white guy interviewing him, I think. Yeah, it was. This is a black YouTube channel, but this is a white guy interviewing him, and he starts talking about racism. Let's just listen to him for a little bit.
That say that there are inequities between how blacks and whites are handled when they commit the same crime, and step over that and have lunch and then say, obey the guy in blue. Mm-hmm. If we are going to be not just spiritual, but intelligent people, we have to take up the cry of the disenfranchised, no matter the color, and work to do things in a way that is fair and just for all people. The church needs to be leading the way in this conversation.
Where is the church?
The church is totally...
What's going on, Kofi? Oh, sure do. Okay, so thank you. Don't get off the line yet. Don't get off the line yet. Hang on, let me make sure I take care of it. No, I'll replay it. Thank you for that, Kofi. All right, hanging up. Okay. Okay, so let me just play that for you again. Kofi, let me know what I just did. So let me back it up a bit. Forgot about that. See where this starts. Yeah, see, it's a white guy.
Should work, get a job, be responsible. But then the same people who say that, when they see that you have a prior record, would never hire you or rent to you. So you cannot integrate and discriminate at the same time and call it justice. I think that the police officer and those who wrestle with them are just symptoms of those who they represent. A whole world of people. We are creating these septic tanks of frustration. And until we go in there and clean this system out and make sure that there is justice for all, we cannot look at stats that say that there are inequities between how blacks and whites are handled when they commit the same crime, and step over that and have lunch and then say, obey the guy in blue. If we are going to be not just spiritual, but intelligent people.
Okay, so I mean, he's trying. And the way the interview started is the white guy that you saw, he said, because this was about the whole Black Lives Matter thing and police misconduct, race soldier misconduct. And the white guy said, well, this is very dicey, isn't it? You can watch it yourself if you care to, because these policemen are actual, according to the gospel, ministers of the gospel. These police officers are ministers of the gospel. I mean, so, TD Jakes didn't even have to agree to have this conversation, but he did. But he tries. But I mean, he can only go so far, right? So he's saying the things that, are easy to say somewhat, because you don't know how close you can go to the bar before they threaten everything. So, I mean, I'm not really especially blaming TD Jakes for that. In fact, I really give people a break if what they're trying to do is protect their children or their grandchildren. A lot of people disagree with me, but I do. I just think there's certain things that are so ingrained into the Homo sapien evolutionary psyche to where it's kind of silly to tell people to disregard it. You might be able to find an outlier here or there, but that's just my point of view on that. Feel free to disagree. So that's TD Jakes. Now I'm looking for the Potter's House, what his website says about it. And if I have to, I'll type it in. I know I had it. But basically, I don't know if I want to go through all that. I don't think I do. What I will do is go to another place. on his website, The Potter's House, it just talks about the CARES Act, how it's going to affect the church's financial status. Now, this particular video is him talking with Jerome Adams, the current U.S. Surgeon General, about the disproportionate effect, again, that, here it is. This week, this is T.D. Jakes talking. This week, I had the pleasure of having an extremely informative conversation with the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Jerome Adams. We discussed the increased propensity for African-Americans to die from COVID-19, the benefits of aggressive social distancing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so no, can I say that Pastor Jakes met the line? Did he meet the criteria of having vision so that his people would not perish? No. He'll probably be one of the churches that's going to be given extra money to test and vaccinate, which is really going to make Black Americans really sick. They won't be faulty numbers at that point. So no, he missed it on that one too. So I'd have to say, no, he's harming his flock. Now, I did not say he's done it yet. I said he probably will be one of the churches because it supposedly affects Black Americans so much worse that he will probably be thinking that, or be preparing his flock to say, we can do our testing and our vaccinations right here on the church grounds. Now, this is something that the GOCC people have said. And that was not plagiarism. That was them. They said it first. I agree with them. And from what I can see, that's the direction the Potter's House is going. And those 3 local churches in Ohio, it's going to be all over the country. But if the leaders like T.D. Jakes, people like that, Minister Louis Farrakhan, and even, well, I'll talk about Elder Ricard when we get to him. If the big time guys are on this, Black people are disproportionately dying, go get tested, go get vaccinated, the smaller ones are. So I know it's pretty disheartening. Okay, now this is Elder Ricard, and I stopped it here so that you could see the people that he says. Well, let's look at the people in the background. This is on every one of their videos lately. I don't know, for the last couple years. And the name of this video, which was I think it was a live stream. It was a live stream yesterday. Yes, it was 22 hours ago. I remember, seeing it. A nation, because according to them, a nation is a race. It's a biological thing. A nation is a biological thing. It's a structure of laws and economics and so on that is for a particular type of people, and it's a bloodline thing. Okay, so that's what a nation is to them. And he said a race is only as strong as the men who leads them. Well, I mean, I had problems all with the title of the thing, but I wanted to call in and ask the question, but I'm pretty sure they know who I am, so it's like kind of no point in doing that. But the question I wanted to ask is, are you saying that all these people behind you, who you say are the 12 tribes of Israel, are you saying they are all one race? Are you saying that these people here that you're calling the tribe of Ephraim, I don't want to get it wrong because I'm not sure which part of the Americas that's supposed to be, but are you saying that they are the same race as Levi? Levi stands for, who are those people? Those are the Haitians, okay? Or Judah, which is the Black American Negro. Are you saying that they are the same? Ephraim, Asher, look at this. Issachar, this is the Mexican. This is Gad, the North American Indian. He's saying these are all the 12 tribes of Israel. And he's saying that they're a race. I wanted to ask him that because I wanted to say, now, I know you use extra biblical sources. You are always using news stories, science studies, history, and so on. And I just wanted to know whether or not you had found any data that could back up that they're the same race as us, physically, or how they're even treated. Because that's not the data that I see. The data I see is that their life expectancies, their income, their wealth, their education is the same as white folks after the first generation. Oops. Did this not play? Oh, it wasn't supposed to play. Okay. So yeah, that's, and then, so that's the first problem, a nation or race, and then as only as strong as the man who leads them. I mean, I guess. because he actually said, if you're a woman who thinks that you can lead, you're totally mistaken. You should sit down somewhere. Go sit down. Well, I mean, women have brains, and sometimes our brains on a particular matter or just generally are superior to the men around us. And so your belief, sir, and the people who agree with you is just that the smarter women have a disability. They were given these superior intellects as a waste. Because if the man if they're around a man whose intellect is less and he chooses not to listen to her, that's just the way it goes. Yeah, and I suppose you have some biblical or strategic reason for that, some doctrinal reason. But okay, but to a certain extent, I'm going to agree with you, only because I understand that the organizations, the big hierarchical organizations, there are dominance hierarchy, and dominance hierarchies are the evolutionary result of the pressure on males to have access to females for sex. The gateway to immortality. If a human females are not like human chimpanzees. You can't tell when we're in estrus, and it's the women who choose. So what men do is they've constructed this hierarchy for access to women. And it still may not. I mean, all the things that they say, are going to make them an alpha male. Now, if they really shut some guy out completely, he's not going to have as much access, which is why black marriages don't last very long, because the black men don't have access to stuff. But to the degree that, there's an old African proverb that says women have no chief. Duh. So if you start an organization and we decide to go along with it, you can lead the darn thing, because women have no chief. We don't need a chief. Because we don't need an organization for there to be a chief of, because the organization is for access to us. So why would we need an organization to be chief of? That's the reason we don't have chiefs. So to the degree that you construct these organizations and nations like this for yourself, okay, and we might go along with it, until we don't go along with it. When we don't go along with it, it's all going to fall apart anyway. 90% of the people who do all the work in all these organizations, I'm sure, are women. I know it's definitely true in the Christian church. Let's see. I already played him. I think I've talked about all three of them. I was going to open up the conference line and have people call in. Yeah, you can take a look here. This is where you see my cursor here. This is how they delineate the 12 tribes of Israel. I don't mean to laugh at them. I'm not laughing at anybody's faith. So they say that the Negroes, that's like the Black Americans, that's Judah. The Puerto Ricans, regardless of what they look like, they could look like Ricky Martin. That's Ephraim. We're not supposed to care that they're white people. Cubans, again, they can look like Fidel Castro, or they can look white, or they can look mulatto. They're also supposed to be, one of the 12 tribes. They're supposed to be of the same race as Martin Luther King. Come on now. Samoans and Hawaiians, I mean, there are a few of them in the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islands do have some black people, but there aren't very many of them left on Hawaii and Samoa. Levi, the Haitians, you can look at that some other time. You could see GOCC 12 Tribes of Israel. You can look that up yourself. But the problem that I have, that's a big problem. Because if you're in COVID-19 right now and you're warning people about the agenda to vaccinate and test and thereby make sick and track black people, and you'll use that word, you'll say black people, black people, black people, and then every once in a while you'll slip up and say minorities and say Latinos too. And there are people who are saying that the Latinos are suffering just as badly. No, they're not. Under COVID-19, no, they're not. They're not. Just like all the other things I've always said on this channel about it always being about the status of their generation, what generation they're in. That holds true for this thing too. So this is who is this? This is the New York Times, And so they were talking about the disproportionate effect of COVID on Latinos. They weren't even talking about black people. So they were talking about that it is disproportionate. And there's some places where it's 20 times as high. But then look what they say. Right along with what I've always said about income, wealth, and everything else. The disparities are bigger in states like Oregon, Washington, and Utah that have newer and less established Latino communities. In other words, they're immigrants. It's about them being immigrants and learning the language and getting acculturated. It's not about them being Latino. It's not about them being mistreated on that basis. And they're saying that that's compared with states like California, Arizona, and New Mexico, where they've been here a long time, and they're white folks. The main thing is they're not black. And, they know the language, so they're fine. In one generation, they leapfrog over 21 plus generations of foundational black Americans. In some states, including Arizona and Texas, state data shows that Latinos are getting sick at rates close to their share of the population. Yeah. In other words, what it should be. In New Mexico, Latinos who make up half the population and have a long history in the state have about the same number of cases relative to their population as whites. So it's not about them being Latino. GOCC, Gathering of Christ Church, Elder Rakah, Elder Lawyer. They're not in the same shape as us. If you have a biblical doctrine that's saying that we're being treated the way we are because we've forsaken the law and we're God's special people, but we're also the target of all these other people who are not the chosen people, who are jealous, and then you put people in the same boat, and you're saying, and then you use your basis of verifying those scriptures by what is happening to us, and what is happening to us has happened to us historically. But then you throw in these other people who don't share that history, who don't have those same things happen to them. No, you don't have any vision. You're saying things that are patently false because it's easier, I guess, to say them. So I didn't say everything in the order that I wanted to say them. I thought I was going to show every one of the tabs, but I didn't. But I'm pretty satisfied. I'm going to look in the studio and see if anybody wants to talk, and see if Kofi, you can type if you want me to open up the conference line. I can do that, and we can have a little discussion. Maybe there's something that you want to raise, some question that you want to raise. It's not, since you're the only one here right now. I guess not. I'll give you about 10 seconds to type something. Well, and while I'm waiting, you said extra money for tests is such a conflict of interest. Yep, it is. It totally is. You're talking about the hospitals, yeah. Or I don't know if you're talking about the hospitals or the churches and mosques, the religious institutions. I don't know. But as long as I've got how long have I been going here? Hour and 15 minutes. Let me just say this. I have been effectively banned pretty much from YouTube without them having to close down my channel. I definitely believe I've been shadow banned. I've seen statistics that make no kinds of sense, right? So telling me after the first 10 or 12 hours that I had X number of watch hours. I don't remember how many it was, 40 or 50 watch hours. And I don't remember how long the video was. But then it said the average duration of the views was 0 minutes and 0 seconds. You can't have accumulated that amount of watch time and have nobody, having the watch time be 0. I've seen all kinds of other things that are very dubious to me. So, yeah, somebody's turning up dials and turning down dials, and they do that all over the internet. That's just part of war, deceit. So I do imagine that I have a much bigger reach, that many more people are watching my videos than it seems. But they are also taking steps to even reduce that further, so that people are being unsubscribed. That happens a lot, and they're just turning down the dial on the number of views I've gotten, so people are less likely to want to watch it. It's less likely to appear in people's feeds and stuff. So, I just accept that. So, this might be the last video I do for a while, depending on how it performs. I haven't stopped I haven't stopped thinking about ways in which I can be effective. It might not be here on YouTube. Might have to change tracks in how I do the videos, even though, I shouldn't have to. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. But it may be a while before I come back here because there's no point in me doing videos if nobody's going to be able to watch or listen to them. So, that having been said, and having not gotten. All of a sudden I could see a bunch of stuff in the chat now. Anyone promoting mass vaccinations given by non-black people to black people for any reason is either grossly mistaken or an outright enemy of black people. Absolutely. And then you said the extra money. By the extra money, you meant any organization, right? So, yeah, I agree. Whether it's the Nation of Islam, the Gathering of, well, it won't be the Gathering of Christ Church, I don't think, but any of these Baptist churches, any of these Pentecostal churches, any of these Christian black churches. And then somebody said that I was shadow banned today. KWDON7. You didn't get any notifications even after clicking the bell. Yeah. Sorry to hear that. But thank you for being here anyway. And I guess with that, I will bring this to a close. So I'm not going to open up the conference line, and we'll see, we'll see what happens going forward. This has been the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer Program for Thursday, May 21st, 2020. Signing out. Stay safe, stay healthy.